الحكمة هي الفقه ومعرفة مراد الله ورسوله، والحكمة وضع الشيء في موضعه.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. At this time, I am pleased to briefly introduce to you our guest speaker for today's program. His talk is entitled The Career Path Working Towards My Goals. He is a qualified teacher and principal for the last 21 years. He is currently running projects for the Ministry of Education in Qatar for low-income, out-of-school students, teaching functional skills. They aim to give students a skill set to enable them to find work and support themselves and their families, inshallah. Kindly give your due attention to Mr. Abu Ammar Abdul-Hameed Alam. Mr. Alam, please go ahead, sir.
Jazakallah khair, brother Abdul-Hameed. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inna alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina wa ala ahlihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Then my brothers and my sisters and our students, our sons and our daughters who are studying currently or coming towards the end of the studies, then unfortunately due to connection problems, my short lecture will be somewhat shortened even more, as I do have a prior engagement coming up in about 20 minutes. So I'll try and fit as much of what I wanted to say within the brief 20 minutes, allowing, inshallah, towards the end a few minutes for questions from your side. And if I'm not available for those questions, then I'm sure Ustad Ahmed will be able to facilitate any answers that you may require. But let me start initially by saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you to worship Him, as He subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that He created jinn and mankind to worship Him, or He did not create jinn and mankind except to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also said, خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ أَمَلًا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one, He who created death and He created life, that He might try you, or He might test you to see which of you is best in deeds, in actions and in deeds. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in many places in the Quran, and as conscientious students that you are, you will understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created you to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to worship Him in the way that He has legislated. So when we are working towards our goals, which is the title of my very brief lecture today, or this morning, you've got that this afternoon, I think, for you guys in the Philippines, then the first goal is your preservation of your deen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with. The way to look at it, my sons and my daughters, is that in the whole of the ard, in the whole of the world, and if you look at your own society within the Philippines and within your own city that you're in, that Allah has chosen you for guidance when you didn't do anything to deserve it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still chose you. And this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He has guided you upon the correct path and has guided you upon the best of conduct. So the first of the goals, no matter where you go after your compulsory education now, the first and most important goal is the preservation of your deen and the preservation of yourselves with respect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Muslims, you are aware that our way of life, that the Muslim way of life is constantly under attack and under scrutiny. Not physical attack, we're not talking about physical attack. I'm talking about our choices that we make, that those things that we do are always under scrutiny and always given to attacks from organizations, from groups, from institutes that do not want to see Islam prosper in any society. And indeed, Allah's Messenger ﷺ has mentioned that the shaitan will not rest until we follow him, and he will be waiting for us in front, behind, towards our left and towards our right, in all directions, in order to misguide us. And this is the plot of shaitan. The plot of shaitan is to misguide, and the plot of shaitan is to ensure that we do not preserve our deen and our religion. So upon you, my sons and my daughters, upon you is to stay patient, remain patient, and to persevere upon the truth. And it is upon you to do those things which are pleasing only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to stay away from those things that are pleasing to shaitan. Indeed, shaitan has made it easy for us to follow those things which are in disobedience to Allah. Has made it easy. And sometimes, as the Messenger ﷺ has mentioned, that there will come a time when holding on to Islam will be like holding on to hot coals. So it is not easy. It isn't easy. Nobody said it was going to be easy. I don't think any of your teachers ever said that it was going to be easy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides you, and He sends angels for your guidance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes you to preserve your deen, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive you of your sins when you return back to Him. When you return back to Him. Every prayer time, between the prayers, when you make dua, you return back to Allah, and Allah forgives. So the first point, when you're working towards your goals, and you're working towards what you want to do post-compulsory, post-secondary education, is always to have in your mind that your deen requires your preservation so that you may follow Islam as it should be followed. Once we've moved on from that point, then I'm sure it has already been mentioned to you that when you are moving on, and this is my second point, that you are making life choices. You're making life choices. Those life choices that you make, once they are in accordance with the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you make those life choices based on a number of different things. You make those life choices based on wealth, based on your interests, based on your lifestyle, based on the guidances that you receive from your teachers and from your parents, indeed based on Islam, so that you do not choose a life choice isn't made that would contend and contradict the Sunnah of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So making life choices now is one of the most important aspects that you're going to get to grips with. And to get to grips with how to make a life choice, how to make those choices, and a life choice, my sons and my daughters, a life choice is that choice that you make, that when you make that choice, you believe and you think that it will affect the outcome of what you will do and what you will become for the rest of your life. And Allah knows best how that pans out for you in the future. So those are life choices. So for example, the career that you choose is a life choice, because once you've chosen it, you begin to restrict yourself within that life choice that you made. So as your teachers may have already mentioned earlier, your options to move on, there is the university option where you pass your examinations and then you enter into a university. There are vocational courses available. There are apprenticeships available. There are other types of training courses available, and then there's a work environment available. So your options are varied and many, but in all of the options that you have, what's the first thing that you look at? The first thing that you look at is the preservation of your deen before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the first thing you look at. So for example, if you are choosing a university course as one of the options that you would consider, then have a look to see that when you enter that university course, that you are not going to end up disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or His Messenger. Because, for example, the majority of universities in nearly every part of the world, not every part of the world, but nearly every part of the world, allows the free mixing between males and females. So when you enter university, are you making halal upon yourself the free mixing between males and females? Because that's the environment that you will end up in. If you end up in that environment and you're free mixing, then this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already forbidden. So your choices therefore are limited to what it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed. And the means to something never justifies the ends. You cannot take a means towards a goal which is haram in of itself, because Allah has forbidden that. Allah has forbidden that. So for example, in this case, you cannot be, if your goal is, for example, to acquire wealth and to have enough money for you to support yourself and your family and your future families, then that's a noble goal in of itself, because that's something which is encouraged within Islam, that you should be able to support yourself and your families. However, by supporting your family and yourself, if the way that you earn your living is haram, by selling those things which are haram, then that has been forbidden already by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore the earnings become haram. So it's not just looking at your goal, it's looking at the means by which you achieve that goal. And the means which you use to achieve that goal has to be in of itself something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. So when you are considering university, it isn't always the best option. Ensure that whatever you do in higher education, that you do not compromise your belief and your deen, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge you upon your actions, and your intent will judge you upon your actions. If your actions are contradictory with your statement, and your statement is that I wish to follow Islam and I wish to preserve my deen, but yet your actions are other than that, then Allah judges you by your actions as well as your intent. So choose those things which are firmly halal for you, and not something which is forbidden for you. And within university courses, which is the other part of the university debate, some courses are a little, for use of a better word, irrelevant and futile, because, for example, in the Philippines, there's no point to you studying a course in Swahili and Afrikaans when you're living in Philippines, because that course may not have any relevance to you at all. It's a university degree, it's a course, but it doesn't have any relevance. Likewise, there are courses at university which you may want to do out of pure interest because you're interested in something, but it may not be a course that brings you fruitful earnings in the future. So, for example, a person who does a pure psychology degree. Now, psychology in of itself has issues because the basis of psychology is based upon atheism. So, if you know the basis of where these courses come from, the basis of psychology is upon atheism, and the intent of most university courses grounded in psychology is to promote the ideas of atheism over and above any religious affiliation that a person may have. But again, a degree in pure psychology does not give you a trade. It gives you an understanding of psychology, but it doesn't give you a trade. You can't do anything with that degree yet up until you specialize and you have some experience. And many degrees from university are like that. So, for example, people who do a degree in pure chemistry, theoretical chemistry, for example, doing theoretical chemistry doesn't give you a trade. What it gives you is a knowledge set. After your degree, you still have to do something in order to give you the experience to be able to work. So not all university degrees are equal. Some degrees have to be really looked at carefully because they propound and they forward the ideas of atheism through either, for example, biology, and you study evolution and Darwin and the Darwinian theory, which again is a theory that assumes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not exist. So therefore, in the absence of a creator, how did creation come about? And those type of facile arguments and discussions through those degree courses. So again, be careful as to what you choose, and do not put yourself in a compromising situation where you cannot preserve your religion about you because of the circumstance that you put yourself in. And remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not just forbidden the haram, He has also forbidden the route taken towards that haram. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has forbidden zina, fornication, adultery, but He's also forbidden the route taken towards fornication and adultery, which includes free mixing, which includes particularly in non-Muslim societies like the one you live in, going to bars and clubs and pubs and etc. So all of that is forbidden because all of that is a means to adultery and fornication. So be careful how you choose your degree courses when you're going to university, and what position you put yourself into with respect to compromising your religion and not being able to preserve it. Of course, there are alternatives to university, and I'm sure this has been mentioned to you. For example, you have vocational courses. Vocational courses can be a little better than university courses because they land you with a direct profession. So what you get out of a vocational course is a profession that you can do something. You've learned a skill set, and that skill set will be something that enables you to take on a particular job. Some vocational courses are degree equivalent. So when you take a vocational course and you go steps of the vocational course, they eventually become degree equivalent. So the potential earnings that you get from vocational courses is no less than what you would do from certain degree courses. Again, vocational courses tend to be free mixing. However, it depends on what vocational course you take. Because, for example, if you take one on nursing, I'm sure, like it is in the UK and like it is in Qatar, all nursing courses are filled with 100% women, and that's who you mix with because that's the course. On the other hand, engineering courses may be filled with guys, with men, particularly if you do civil engineering, mechanical engineering. Generally, they are filled, almost 100% of the courses filled with men. So you may have a wider option choosing vocational courses in terms of preserving your deen, number one. Number two, in terms of the course selection that entitles you, or gives you rather, specific skill sets within a work environment. So for example, if you choose a vocational course in computer science, computer science seems to be quite popular nowadays, particularly with regard to software engineering and artificial intelligence. So if you take that type of course, then a vocational course in that will give you not just a skill set to work, but it will give you the work experience that you need, that employers are looking for, which makes you immediately employable. Now, you could continue doing vocational courses up until the level of the course you've taken is equivalent to a degree. So therefore, employers look at it as if it is a degree. And occasionally, there are ways to give you an equivalence through a university as a degree certificate. So you've done the national vocational qualification at level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is in the Philippines, and then a university is more than happy to give you an equivalence degree to show that you've reached the right standard for that degree. So that's something that you will have to look into. But again, making sure that your religion is given the most in terms of priority. And coming towards the end, because I do have to, I'm running slightly late for my next meeting, but I don't want to end until I've kind of mentioned a few more very short points. And one of them is, just because you see Muslims falling into un-Islamic practices, that doesn't make it good for you. Don't use other Muslims as an example to follow, and then you fall into something which involves disobedience to Allah, because that's something that is happening around the world, even within Muslim societies. And this is something that you need to be aware of. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, rather the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, has already mentioned that the majority of Muslims will be astray, because he said that there will be 73 sects. Out of those 73 sects, only one will be the victorious sect, and that is the one that follows the Sunnah of Allah's Messenger and the way of the companions. The remaining 72, those will be in the hellfire, and these are from amongst the Muslims. So you can see that the majority of Muslims do not understand. The majority of Muslims are not to be followed. What is to be followed is your religion before you. You've been taught your religion, and you will continue to be taught religion, inshallah. You can decipher, clever individuals that you are, between right and wrong. So in this case, do not be bewildered by the great number of Muslims who do things in opposition to the Sunnah. Don't be bewildered by that, because this is already foretold by the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is going to happen. It has happened, and this is not something that should bewilder you or depress you, because this is part of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. This is something that was going to happen. Upon you is to preserve your deen despite what happens. Despite what happens, and it's a show of your strength. It is a show of your character. It is a show of your dignity, that you can maintain and persevere and preserve your religion irrespective of what goes on around you. If you can keep your head while all those around you are losing theirs, if you can keep and preserve your religion, then that is what is required from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is happening at the universities and what is happening at colleges nowadays, this is of the greatest concern to educators like myself and your teachers, because everything seems to be built around dismantling Islam. So they try and convince you that there's nothing wrong with free mixing. They try and convince you, my son, to shave your beard. They try and convince you, my daughter, to remove your hijab. They convince you that all these things are fine because you've entered the professional world. Well, there's lots of good examples from UK amongst the Muslims, amongst our community there, from where I live here in Qatar, and I'm sure from your communities there, where you can preserve your deen and be an utter professional in the field that you've chosen. You can have both. Your deen is preserved inside your heart and it is acted on by your limbs. That's your deen. What you have as your dunya is actions that are in accordance with the sunnah but enable you to earn your livings and to preserve your families and to ensure that you have enough to survive. So don't waste time on doing those courses and those things which are irrelevant and that won't give you any potential for earning. If you're interested in something, then keep it as an interest, but choose a degree, choose a course that will allow you to progress and give you potential for earning and preserving your families and everything else. Also, just two last things before I leave, and I do have people waiting for me for my next meeting, so I'm going to cut short. My apologies, Ustad Ahmed, but I think I'll have a few more, another minute or two, and then I'll need to end. First of all, please do not waste time with irrelevant things. Don't waste time with computer games. Don't waste time with the internet. Don't waste time with things that are of no benefit for you in this dunya and the akhirah. If something does not benefit you, like video games, like the internet and just general browsing, you're not doing anything particular, if they do not benefit you in this dunya and the akhirah, then it's a waste of time, and that time could have been spent doing something very useful. So don't waste your time with irrelevant things. Knowledge has to have benefit for you in this dunya or the akhirah. It has to have some benefit. If it doesn't have any benefit, then I think it's the first time in human history, and Allah knows best, where masses of populations have fallen into those things which are of no value, neither in the dunya or in the akhirah. Not in the dunya or the akhirah, and this includes, PlayStations and Nintendos and whatever is available out there now. So that's the first point. Second point, and the last one, is that you'll often hear this thing within colleges, universities, and general media that you should follow your dream and you should do what you want to do by any means necessary, etc. And these are catchphrases because the media knows how to captivate you. And the Messenger ﷺ already said that there will be those people who have eloquent speech, and yet there will be shayateen. And even amongst the Muslims, there are people who have eloquent speech, but yet they call to disobedience to Allah. So don't fall. And I understand that you received Islamic education within an Islamic environment, so you should be the first ones to understand that when people talk and their speech is alluring and their speech is all of a sudden not just alluring but is eloquent, that in of itself is not a reason to follow, because the shaitan has speech which was alluring and which convinced people and jinn, and he was alluring. So don't fall for speech which is alluring, which is eloquent, because that is already foretold by the Messenger ﷺ that there will be shayateen like that from among mankind who will have alluring speech and eloquent speech, so much so that it will be like magic, that people will follow them based on their speech, and yet there will be callers to the hellfire. So don't fall prey to this. Use your intelligence and use what tools that you've been taught to decipher between right and wrong, and inshallah Allah will preserve you. And it's not by any means necessary. You acquire by any halal means necessary. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve you all, my sons and my daughters, in this difficult transition that you are going through. And may He preserve your deen, and may you be a cause of your actions be a cause of you entering Jannah and pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. I'm sorry I can't stay because I've actually overrun by a few minutes. So inshallah, at another time I'll be more than happy to join you again. Again, my apologies to your teachers for cutting this short. So I think we'll end there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خيرا.
Okay, shukran. Jazakallah khairan, Sir Abu Ammar, for that wonderful talk and the beneficial reminders. So we hope to have you again in another one of our activities. Okay, shukran.